Three, two, one. Hey everyone, I'm excited for the last segment here. I am joined by Sean Swarner, who is featured in the story Trough and Peak on page 83 of Friday Forward. So there's the post, there's the book. Sean has an incredible story. He beat cancer twice before he turned 18, and despite losing functionality in one of his lungs, is one of the world's greatest endurance athletes. He's climbed the highest mountain on all 7 continents, has been to the North and South Poles, and is the author of Keep Climbing and the subject of the documentary True North, the Sean Swarner story. Sean, thanks so much for joining us. And I know you're right back from a trip, so why don't you start off telling us where you were?
Yeah, I appreciate it. My body's dealing with a 9-hour time change and a 38-hour flight schedule. But I climbed, I'm not actually in Africa, but I was at this mountain just about, I think it was last week.
Oh.
So this is the highest mountain in Africa, Kilimanjaro, and I take a group up every year. But I'm excited, man. Thanks a lot for having me here.
All right, I promise you I'll go on that trip. So we're going to find out a time that works. So Sean, what was it about climbing Everest as a cancer survivor that carried so much meaning for you?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. You know, going back a little bit, as you mentioned, I've been through 2 terminal cancers. I was given 14 days to live when I was 16 years old. So I have a slightly skewed view on life and what it really means. And I think what it boils down to is I'm more afraid of not living than I am of dying. And I wanted to use the Everest as literally the highest platform in the world to give other people hope. You know, cancer is a global epidemic now, and I really wanted to give back to the community and let people know that, you know, cancer doesn't necessarily have to be the end. It can be the beginning, and it can be amazing.
I love how what you said is the opposite, I think, of how most people live, afraid of not dying rather than living. Look, as you said, you've lived your life with a ton of mental and physical resiliency, overcoming incredible disadvantages. I'm curious, there's this Navy SEALs rule of 40%, that when your mind tells you you're done, you're only 40% done. When was there a time when you really were done and you thought you could do more and you couldn't?
Oh, geez. You know, it's funny because I've done the Hawaii Ironman as well, and people try to compare that to Everest and the other mountains. Like, oh, how was that? And in all honesty, I love the Hawaii Ironman. It was easy compared to everything else. Yeah. But I think there was a moment, not recently, where I was about ready to give up. And it was when I was 13 years old, battling through my first cancer. It was advanced 4th-stage Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I remember being 60 pounds overweight. I remember being bald from head to toe. And I remember being on my hands and knees in the shower, weeping and just trying to figure out what life was all about, because I was thinking what my neighbor was going through when he was getting ready for school the same day, because what he was concerned about was completely different than what I was concerned about. You know, he was concerned about being popular. I was concerned about literally surviving. So I didn't know if I was gonna make it to the next morning or not.
So that's a good segue. I mean, we all understand, well, us mere mortals understand the concept of mind over matter, but I'm not sure actually they know how to leverage that. So how do you get yourself? Do you do any priming? Like, how do you get in the right mindset when you're fighting off fatigue, you're making the final push, or you're about to do something that you know is just going to be really, really difficult, and you're gonna want to quit?
Wow, you know, looking at it from a couple, you know how fast your mind thinks. So when you were talking, I was thinking, okay, this, but at the end, you're like, your mind's going to quit, and I'm thinking, okay, well, you embrace the suck. Like, it's going to be a horrible experience. It's going to be a very difficult experience, but knowing what you're getting into before it even happens, you're preparing yourself psychologically. And I think what also helps is, I'm a huge believer in the mind-body connection. And people do a lot of visualization, but there's, they see themselves doing it. And as opposed to seeing it from the third person, kind of like a dream, you need to see it from your own eyes first. And then after that, you bring in some more senses. And the key factor that most people don't bring in, and the key factor that they're missing, that missing link, is we're all human beings, right? We have emotions. Those are incredibly powerful motivators. So if you're visualizing yourself or you're seeing yourself successful, visualize and not just see yourself, but feel it. if you want to, if you might think yourself, you might think to yourself that you're successful, but until you actually have that feeling of success, it's not going to happen. You know, a perfect example, going up Kilimanjaro, where we leave at 11 p.m. midnight, and you know,
To
you're going
you leave to make the final summit.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, for the summit. You know, all through the night, you just turn into a walking zombie.
Yeah.
You know, you're exhausted. But what I do is I help people focus on the end result and how it feels to be there. You know, your body might want to quit, but if you have it here and you have it in yourself, and you really have that connection to your emotions, nothing's going to get in your way.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I'm sure you've heard that Michael Phelps story about his you know, he used to visualize every stroke and have him count it out, and his goggles malfunction, you know, during the Olympics, and he won a gold medal in that race, and people asked him, he couldn't see, and he said, I really had swam the whole race over and over and over in my mind and counted the strokes and knew the turn. I mean, there is a preparation element that goes into this that I think, right, that is probably more than people believe.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for training purposes, you know, people ask me all the time, well, how do you train for something like that? I train so hard that when the actual event comes around, I'm
Yeah.
thankful I don't have to train anymore.
I've heard that too. I had a story about a guy who was teaching public speaking. Everyone was whining in practice, and he said, "If you think this is hard,
Right?
I hope this is harder than the real life." So related to that, what sort of support systems and accountability, you know, do you use in your life to kind of stay on track?
You know, one of the things is I have my own journal. It's called the Summit Challenge. But at the beginning of it, there's a list of values. Oh, you can't see it.
Yeah. They're very lucid values.
Right. You have to use your imagination.
Yeah.
They're a list of values, and every 3 weeks I tap back into my personal core values. What means most to me?
Yeah.
You know, because there's so many distractions in the world. You turn on the news, it's negative. You wake up, you turn on the news. You're starting your day on a negative note. You're turning on the news, going to bed. You're ending your day on a negative note. But if you
I take away, don't turn on the news. That's the moral of that.
There you go, right?
Yeah.
But focus on what means most to you, and
Yeah.
just keep reminding yourself of that, and keep focused on who you are.
So Sean, tell people about these. You just got back from one. Tell people about these Kilimanjaro trips that you do, and how they can get involved if they're interested. Because I told you, I promised I'd go on one, and it's a pretty incredible manifestation. I think a lot of what you're talking about right now.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great analogy. You know, going up the mountain and anything in life, you're challenged all the time in life. But I help people through 7 days going up the mountain. It's actually 6 days up and 1 day down. We just kind of circumnavigate the trip, circumnavigate the mountain and go straight out. But anybody can join it. You know, what we do is it's a fundraiser for a cancer charity. We send a survivor for free, and it's that survivor's responsibility to raise funds for next year's survivor, kind of paying it forward. Which is kind of funny. You know, I have your book over here too. I was going to hold it up, but it probably just disappeared.
Yeah. particularly since it's blue-green. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's a great analogy because you're going for a goal. But so many people, if you look at the entire mountain, you get overwhelmed. You know, and if you break it down by camp to camp to camp to camp, just like going day by day by day in real life, anything's possible. So it's a great way to leave the distractions of home behind. You know, no cell phones, no technology, no nothing. But then really focusing in putting yourself in the moment, going towards your goal, you realize, hey, you know, if I have fun doing what I'm doing, the byproduct happens to be the summit. So the summit becomes a byproduct of having fun and enjoying what you're really doing.
And these are pretty novice hikers, right?
Absolutely. There's nothing technical about it. You know, you don't need ice axes and crampons. I've taken a 13-year-old to a 70-year-old. So you don't need any previous experience, but you probably don't want to whine about sleeping in a tent for a few days.
Yeah. I need to know that. All right. Well, Sean, thank you very much for joining us. I hope people enjoy Friday Forward, your story. I know you help all of us rethink really what is possible and where our limits are. So you're very much an inspiration.
I definitely appreciate that. You know, and one thing in closing too is if you want to change who you are, just change what you do.
Yeah. It's so difficult, so simple. All right, Sean. Hopefully, maybe next time I'll see you in person, we'll be climbing
In Africa. I'll pick you
in
up at the
Africa.
Kilimanjaro International Airport.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.